Hello and welcome to our Wednesday webinar from the International Centre for Sustainable Carbon. My name is Rebecca and I'm a part of the communications team here. Our monthly webinars are based on our technical reports, which are available from our website www.sustainable-carbon.org. Residents from member countries and employees of sponsoring organisations can download our reports at no charge after a one-off registration on our website. Please make sure to type in any questions that you have into the questions box as we go along, and we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. The subject for today's webinar is Coal as a Resource, Gasification and Chemicals, presented by Ian Reid. Over to you, Ian.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And hello, and thank you for joining for the webinar today. I've been looking at coal as a resource for some years, and there's a number of reports that you can find on our website. But this time I'm going to concentrate on coal and gasification. I mean, liquefaction is also an important use for coal, but that also requires coal gasification for hydrogen. So it is sort of covered. If you want to look into more detail on this topic, the full report will come out early in 2025. So let's move on. Yeah, my background is in fossil fuels, gas, oil, and also in petrochemicals. And for the last 10 years, I've been working with the centre on mainly looking at what else can we use coal for, rather than just coal for power. And this talk fits with that. The coal gasification industry is focused in China, and although it started about 20 years ago, it's really since 2018 that the industry has become of significant scale. China wished to build feedstock security around its own resources, and of course there is precedent for using coal as a feedstock. In fact, the whole early chemical industry was based on coal. This gasification industry has established itself very quickly, but there are increasing environmental issues. It doesn't sit well with international aims to decarbonize. It's very carbon intensive, and there are other issues from plastics and nitrogen pollution, and I'll make some comments about those today. There are other major uses of coal for industry, including steel, and we'll talk a little bit about tar chemicals, which are closely tied to that, and also talk about cement, where we're talking about combustion byproducts. And finally, I'll say something about graphitic products and critical minerals from coal, where there's an exciting project underway. So next slide. Yeah, so let's look at the attraction of coal, and that is primarily its cost. On the right, we see some relative prices, and we have ethane from the Middle East and USA. Ethane to ethylene is probably the simplest route to olefins. We've got liquefied natural gas that's representing liquefied ethane. That's transported to Europe to make olefins, but as you can see, is rather expensive per ton. And oil is the mainstay of petrochemicals in Europe and also actually in China, which is relatively expensive, but of course, for China, making the product in country is very important. And then we come to coal, which looks very cheap here, but actually imported coal is similar to ethane, but we need 3 times as much coal per ton of product. So that'd be closer, that'd be a sort of mid-level bar. And domestic coal, which is what the industry is using, is quite well subsidized. But again, we need 3 or 4 times the tonnage of coal per ton of product. And that's where the feedstock advantage for China, though, is compared to petrochemical plants. The gasification plants are on a very large scale, and the one in the main picture, the Beifang site, is making around 10 million tons of methanol, and China has it produces most of its methanol from coal. It stands for about 80% of the total production, and there aren't that many coal gasification sites, but they are very large scale. And I think economy of scale is very important in the industry to reduce cost, because as you can see, the plant is much more complex than in petrochemicals, as well as coal handling and the gasification system and purification that's needed. The industry is based in methanol to olefins rather than dehydrogenation as in ethane or naphtha. And in common, there are the fractionation and polymerization systems that are needed. This particular site makes over 100 different products, including 20 grades of polyethylene. So it's a major venture. So just concentrating on the scale of the industry, and I must have taken a little bit of license with this million-ton coal train, but actually the industry is using over 400 million tons of coal per annum at the moment, and rising. There's been a massive expansion over the last 5 years from a low base. As well as being a dominant source of methanol, it's also very important for hydrogen and also ammonia. So hydrogen is used for refineries and also for the ammonia production. When we looked at the plans for the industry in 2020, it looked an outreach, really. But actually, all those plans have been implemented, and this is a very significant industry now. The graphic at the top, it gives an idea of the production levels, and we have about 13 million tons of polyethylene, 9 of polypropylene. Coal to liquids is a fairly significant industry, and actually. At the moment, it looks as though somewhat less coal to chemicals plants will be added to the industry, and but they will continue to make oil and synthetic gas with a major pipeline underway for gas and a new massive project making oil from coal. It's just commissioned. So this industry is a very significant one now. This graphic it really gives us an idea of how the new modern gasification industry compares with the traditional coal to chemicals industry. And if you look at the lower half of the graphic, we can see that traditional chemicals, which amount to around 25 million tons a year in China, are derived from metallurgical coal, coal processed for the steel industry. And from that, we get coal tar, which is important for all the aromatic tar chemicals, and also precursors for graphitic products. And also there's coke oven gas, and that's has historically mainly been used for ammonia synthesis for the ammonia industry. But of course, the advent of this new gasification industry means there's an alternative source of hydrogen and ammonia. The coke oven gas is now being redirected towards the blast steel furnace industry to reduce coal use. On the top half, we the new industry. It's using thermal coal. In fact, it's using somewhat lower quality indigenous coal. We'd expect perhaps more than 3 tons of coal per ton of product. The gasification gives us hydrogen, as I said, to produce ammonia. But that hydrogen also been directed to refineries. The main chemistry for this syngas that's produced from coal is to make methanol, and that methanol can be turned into olefins or aromatics. CTO is when that's done on site, and MTO is done with methanol shipped elsewhere. And of course, there's direct liquefaction. I did mention that. The latest form of that industry is using hydrogen from coal gasification to liquefy coal. And so we move on. This is talk about carbon intensity, and we've been talking about 3 or 4 tons of coal per ton of product. On the right is the Texaco gasifier. The initial expansion of the industry was based on gasification reactors such as this one, using oxygen and a coal slurry. There are other variants in the technology, and China is developing their own reactors that are more suited for lower quality coal, and also to take in bio feedstocks and waste feedstocks as well. The syngas that's produced is largely carbon monoxide, 2 to 1 on hydrogen by volume typically, with CO2 and methane also present. And the water gas shift reaction is then used to convert CO to CO2 and water to hydrogen. In that way, you raise the hydrogen content of the gas. And for methanol, we need at least 2 to 1 hydrogen to carbon monoxide. So when you can now see where the 3 to 1 ratio comes from, because of the original carbon monoxide in the syngas, 2/3 must be converted to get the right ratio, and that is then released as carbon dioxide. And the emissions as a whole are now well over 1 billion tons per year, and with more plants coming on stream, that will rise, and it's not really compatible with China's emission plans. And but there are strategies in place to address that. I'm going to talk about using renewable energy to address this, but actually coal to chemicals has a distinct advantage in cost in carbon capture. The carbon dioxide is already concentrated and virtually prepared for collection, and so then the costs are more to do with piping and sequestration rather than capture, a major advantage over other projects. And also the location of the coal to chemicals plants it appears to be favorable for sequestration, and that would reduce pipeline charges. So that is an important option for carbon capture. Now, but the exciting one, I think, is renewable hydrogen. The graphic here has the gasifier plant, and then the cleanup of the gas, removing some of the impurities before preparing that for the water gas shift reactor. But to this, we've added electrolysis to create additional hydrogen. Now, in a power plant, all the carbon is converted to CO2 and emitted. But as I said, in chemicals, if you're making methanol, then around 30% of the original carbon is in the final product. If you're making hydrogen, then it's zero. But if we can add hydrogen to the mixture, then you can increase the hydrogen CO ratio without doing as much water gas shift chemistry. And that way, more of the original CO can be incorporated into the product. In theory, all of it could be, except for the inherent CO2 in the syngas in its form in the first place. So it's possible by this route to turn almost all the coal carbon into the product, which is where the industry falls short compared to, say, ethane to ethylene, where apart from the combustion side of the steam cracker, most of the carbon ends up in useful products. So this is potentially game changing. And then on top of that, of course, if you're converting all the CO, then you need less carbon monoxide in the first place. And so instead of 3 gasification reactors, 1 would be sufficient if you had sufficient hydrogen. Now, is that a pipe dream? Well, the cost of hydrogen, of course, is been higher than hoped in recent times, and in the West, we're talking around $5 a kilo or more. But there's one of the major gasifiers is looking at hydrogen costs through electrolysis that is not that much greater than hydrogen from a gasifier, which would be game changing. Of course, solar power in China has almost halved in cost over the last 12 months, which has a massive impact on the cost of production of hydrogen. So this could be a way to achieve a very high coal carbon content in the products. The next thing I want to talk about is plastic pollution, and the most important products in gasification, in coal gasification, are polyethylene, polypropylene. They're the most profitable products, and almost all of that is used in packaging. Well, I say all, 60 to 70% is used for packaging, and of course that packaging is for goods produced mainly in China in the case of coal gasification. And then when those products are sent around the world, we have a fairly low recycle rate for about under 10%. And the picture on the left of the plastic rubbish on the beach and the plastic bales, that's our typical image of the plastic problem. And there are of course huge floating islands of plastic in the Pacific Ocean. And there's a major conference on it right now to try and handle this aspect of plastic pollution. And as I say, it's not just for coal to polymers, it's for the whole polymers industry. This is an issue. There is one new process in California that can convert this material into monomers. And the reason that's so important is that this plastic contains a whole range of additives, including flame retardants that make the plastics toxic. And so what happens is when you recycle this material, it's usually to lower grade things like bin liners and things like that. And there's a limited market for that. Whereas if you can return the material to monomer, then you can recreate fresh plastic, and that could be a game changer in the industry. But of course, perhaps not something that you'd want to where you'd want to transport this material back to China to carry that out. So perhaps a threat to the coal gasification industry. On the right-hand side is something a little bit more insidious. There's growing concern about nanoplastics, very small plastic materials. Plastics are very durable in the environment, but they do break down. And we found the material present in soil and water systems, in vegetation, in carrots and potatoes, things like that, and fish, which is perhaps not surprising because of the bottom feeders. But the latest research has plastics in all organs of the body. And some of that you might expect, but because if you're eating food with some plastic in it, then that's entering your system. But there's great concern about detection of plastic in the brain, because that defeats the blood-brain barrier. Now, the research is at a very early stage, and there's a call for researchers to investigate this in much more detail, and certainly we need to know what harmful levels are. But our environment is already loaded with plastics, and that's the issue for the future. Right, so if we move on from that, I'm going to just talk now a little bit about some of the other major uses for coal. And the first one is cement. The cement industry is one of our highest industrial CO2 emitters, and is coming under great pressure to decarbonize. It's not just about energy either. There's an acute shortage of river sand. Unfortunately, desert sand is no good. It's too rounded, and they're also heavy users of water, and concrete is a major waste problem now. We've known for a century that you can use fly ash, a coal byproduct, and I've got a picture of some fly ash on the right-hand side, to replace Portland cement. And in fact, the properties of the cement are better with fly ash, more resistant to water and acidic systems, for instance. The picture behind the text is of one of the HS2 construction sites in the UK, a viaduct about 3 kilometers long, and where fly ash was used around 10 to 20% of Portland cement. This is using up to 50% of ash, a mixture of fly ash and bottom ash, to get the right properties for the finished concrete. And so that's a major step increase in the use of fly ash, and China is already there with use of fly ash for its major projects, including the new bridge tunnel connection between Macau and Hong Kong. Now, you can, when you're looking at reducing the environmental impact of cement production, then people are looking at adding carbon capture, and you know, there's no way around it. If you add carbon capture, then the cost of the material is going to rise. But that's being done in the USA at the moment. But if you use fly ash and slag, then that can reduce the cost of the final product. And so the question is, can we use more fly ash to reduce the cost of the material and also perhaps improve its properties? The fly ash, of course, in China is very cheap because of the massive expansion of the coal power industry, whereas in USA, the price has been rising. And I just checked it this morning; it's over $100 a ton for fly ash in the USA. The fly ash is a silica alumina mixture, and Portland cement is a calcium silicate aluminate. But you can see the price of Portland cement; it's tightening between fly ash and Portland cement in the USA, but there's a huge difference in Asia. The USA does have nearly 3 gigatons of fly ash in storage ponds, but that needs expensive processing. It all has to be dried and decontaminated. The global fly ash market has been rising. I think it's about $14 billion now, but it's not surprising that Asia has dominated the market. The latest finding is perhaps the most interesting, and that is that you can create a concrete with 80% fly ash, replacing Portland cement if you add nanosilica. And I have a picture of the nanosilica on the right. It does need careful handling from a health and safety point of view, but the potential is significant in terms of the reducing the cost of material and avoiding energy use. How does it work? Well, it accelerates the hydration reaction. As you add more fly ash, substitute fly ash for cement, then the setting time gets longer, and eventually that becomes impractical. And the way, if you add nanosilicate, that accelerates the hydration reaction, reduces the setting time, and so you can add more fly ash and achieve strength in a reasonable period. So that's a very exciting development in the cement industry to reduce energy use and emission. Moving to steel, we've already talked about steel as a source of tar chemicals and gases for ammonia. The picture on the right is of a basic oxygen furnace that produces that processes iron ore. In the West, there's a switch toward electric arc technology, processing steel scrap instead of iron ore, that lowers emission. And in fact, here where I am in the UK, the plan is to end blast furnace processing. But that's not the case in Asia, where new plants are being built. And if we look at the main graphic, we can see China's coal blast furnace industry, which produces about 50% of steel production in the world, is a fleet only 15 years old, and so as at least another 25 years. So the expectation is to reduce the emissions from the industry is very challenging, and but this industry is going to continue. We talked about using coke oven gas instead of coal. That's certainly underway in some demonstration plants. The tar products from steel manufacture, of course, remain very important. They include the light distillates, tar applications, paints, enamels, shampoos, The demand, I was amazed, the demand for clinical shampoos is increasing, and that's derived from tar chemicals. And the pitch market's rising. But what we're interested in at the moment is in the tar to graphitic products. And for instance, production of needle coke for aluminium electrodes, a major use for coal tar pitch. But there's research underway to make battery anodes via synthetic graphite, and of course it's a route to carbon fiber and activate carbon, and so forward. Yeah, so I'm just going to say make a few remarks about graphitic carbons. I've talked about these before in previous webinars. On the pitch carbon fiber, the industry is dominated by pan fiber made from acrylonitrile, from propene originally, and so an oil-based product, but with a somewhat simpler process than using lower cost pitch to make pitch fiber. The reason pan fiber dominates is that the high strength of fibers is highly prized, and that's led to dominance in the marketplace. But what's changing are applications in energy and carbon storage. Energy such as supercapacitors, for instance, for short-term electricity storage, carbon storage because of the high surface area of the carbon fibers. They can be attractive for electrophilic applications for CO2 capture, and there the strength is less relevant. So the potential for new markets is improving there, and also there's new thinking to reach the strength required to mix pan and pitch fibers to reduce costs, because the cost is inhibiting the deployment of carbon fiber for transport. On graphene, well, graphene is a two-dimensional structure that can be a single atom thick. And the picture gives you an idea on the left of the hexagonal net-like honeycomb. It's often shown as a flat sheet, but this perhaps gives a more realistic picture of what it might appear like. Its main uses are currently in battery anodes and fabrics, but there are many applications under development. The focus for coal to graphene has been finding process methods, and there are now several, and perhaps the most advanced, making up to 1 kilo at a time, comes from flash joule heating, which is a bit like an incandescent light bulb, vaporizing the filament. When the atoms recombine, they form graphene as an intermediate. But there are other methods, including electrolytic methods that remove non-crystalline matter, leaving behind fragments of graphene that were present in the original coal, and also molten salt techniques that are achieving a similar thing. The challenges are to find large-scale applications where the cost advantage of a low-cost feed can come through. And graphene is still very expensive, especially for high-quality material, but an application such as enhanced concrete might be a route for coal graphene in the future. On graphite, graphite is key to battery electrodes, and China recently imposed export controls on natural graphite. They've a near monopoly position, and they're also making synthetic graphite, because there's the supply of natural graphite is limited. Now, normally synthetic graphite production requires very high temperatures, nearly 3000 centigrade, and that doesn't really fit well with decarbonization strategies. If it could be produced from coal by a more rapid low temperature electrolytic method that offers emission and cost reductions, that would be very advantageous. And that's the subject of latest research in this area in the United States and in China. And my final slide is on minerals. Now, there's enormous interest in rare earth elements and other critical elements shown here at the top of the slide. They're essential to our industries. Wind turbines, for instance, need neodymium for the turbine, over 300 kilograms. Every electric car requires neodymium and other elements for its motor. And as we know, we're now making millions of those. China has a monopoly over rare earth elements and other critical elements, both in terms of world resources, but more significantly in refining the individual elements. The West is seeking deposits, and there are discoveries that would give the industry an independent source of RE outside China. However, there's one project that's of special interest to those involved with coal. Ramaco Resources have a former coal mine near Sheridan, Wyoming. The original intent was to create a new chemical industry using a coal feedstock to make carbon products. The graphitic products we've just talked about, activated and also activated carbon and other tar chemicals and distillates. But the discovery of magnetic rare earth elements at the mine has changed things dramatically. There are now new challenges, though. The content is much higher than seen in other coal deposits, perhaps even higher than rare earth elements in ash that was in the news recently, but lower than in traditional mineral ores, and that might increase costs. But the extraction methods are under test now, and actually should be more benign, as instead of being held in igneous matrices, the elements are more likely bound in clay, and that could, well, we're hoping that means that the extraction of the elements is easier and can be done in water-based technology. The processes followed by China have had a huge impact on the environment in their region, and that is something to be avoided in such a beautiful part of the world, shown in the picture here of the Bighorn Mountains near the mine in Sheridan. And then, of course, what do we do with the coal? Well, there are plans to use the coal. It could just be left. The economics will probably ride on the rare earth elements alone, but it would be fantastic to use the coal, and if that could be used for graphitic products that actually have applications in our renewable energy industries and our scientific industries, that would be fantastic. And then I've just got some closing remarks. On coal gasification, the industry has expanded more than we thought was likely, and it already now offers China that level of feedstock security it desired. So the driver to make more coal to chemical plants has receded somewhat. When we look at the proportion of new polymers plants that will be coal-based, that proportion is falling. But they are still looking to make coal to oil and gas, and two huge projects are on their way for that. The industry is carbon intensive, and that's not compatible with China's CO2 targets. And and that's partly the reason for coal to chemicals slowing down. With emissions of over 1 billion tons of CO2, that's more than half of their steel industry. But there are ways forward. The gasification system means very low capture costs. The geographical location of the gasification industry may be advantageous for sequestration. That's still under development. Another option is to use electrolytic hydrogen. Now, China has the largest renewable energy industry in the world. It's actually larger than the rest of the world combined. And the cost of solar power, for instance, has almost halved within a year. And that means that hydrogen is becoming more available. It does require a lot of water, though, which is a concern. And also, processes like this actually seek constant flows of material of reactants, and a process dependent on time of day, for instance, it needs more thought. On plastic pollution, well, progress is very slow. Even if the process is successful, taking plastics back to monomers, which would be an ideal route, that's going to take many years. On the other aspects of pollution, there are some unknowns, and that we will find out what the real impact of these nanoparticles are in the near future. And then just to make some final remarks on coal tar and steel. China's young bioethanol guarantees the supply of tar chemicals in China, and that's going to be the main source of these chemicals in the future. On cement, there's a focus on using carbon capture to decarbonize the cement industry, and that's being implemented in the US. But substituting Portland cement by ash, it could have a more significant impact without raising costs. And the latest research has reached 80% ash, replacing most of the Portland cement, which could have massive implications for the concrete industry. And with that, I'm going to come to an end. So if you have any questions, then I'm happy to take them now.
Thank you very much, Ian. We have time for one question. There's one here that says, how about carbon intensity from coal to methanol comparing to gas to methanol or naphtha to methanol?
If I take gas to methanol versus coal to methanol, when you reform gas, you virtually create the right Syngas ratio for methanol. So that is a difficult target to match to. Whereas when we make methanol from coal, currently only 30% of the coal carbon ends up in methanol, and the rest of the carbon is rejected as CO2, which obviously is not going to be acceptable in the future. And so either that's going to require carbon capture, and you have to weigh up the cost of gas price and reforming against coal gasification and carbon capture, and the issue there might be that, well, in China there isn't any much gas, is there? That's an option really for Saudi Arabia and USA. On the electrolytic hydrogen option, it's a way to adjust the Syngas ratio and achieve a very high carbon content in the gas, in the methanol product, and that is quite leveling of the playing field. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Ian. That's all we have time for today. If there are any other questions, please do email Ian. So the slides for this webinar are available to download from the webinar page on our website shortly. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you again, Ian. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you,
Goodbye.
Rebecca. Yeah,
No
thank you.
problem.
Bye-bye.